Touchdown, Westerly!
A chance for the Chargers, and they score!
In the front, Fuzzy again!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Roll Call here on 321. My name is Ben Barber, and you're not going to hear very much from me during this show, I assume. I'm very excited. We have a distinguished group of hosts for this show, and it's something that I'm really excited about. Let me introduce, starting left to right, we have Westerly Chief of Police Paul Gingerella, and then we have Rhode Island Hall of Famer, for news and radio and television, Betty-Jo Cugini, and Town Manager Sean Lacey. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Ben.
Good afternoon.
Distinguished. I like that.
You're very distinguished.
Yes,
absolutely. So, Betty-Jo, why don't you tell us what this show is about?
This show is called Roll Call, and it came to light probably 2 years ago, maybe more. The police chief, the town manager, I think you may have even been the police chief at the time when we first started talking about this. There are a lot of first responders out there that don't get the appreciation that they deserve. And people don't understand what happens when people have to go to some kind of a scene, or they just don't know what's happening. And a lot of these organizations also have grant money. And one of the things that they have to do in order to get these grants is that they have to have community outreach. So this was a way to shine a light on those people who are doing the heavy lifting, keeping members of our community safe and across the country and around the world. And so that's basically the premise of this show. And we appreciate 321 Media and you, Ben, for allowing us to do that, to make sure that people are educated on the role that these first responders play, whether it's police, fire, ambulance, whatever the first responders may be.
and I think that the listeners will find it very interesting to as we get involved in the different stories and so forth as to what first responders do, whether it be EMS, fire, police, or whomever, and to what is actually happening out there and going on. And it's not just in our community. We're going to try to reach out throughout the country, right?
That's right.
To get different first responders to come on and tell us some stories and tell us what's going on and give us some inside optics of what their job is all about and some of the things they're responding to. I think it's a great opportunity. 2 or 3 or whatever it is, 4 years in the making, and here we are.
And here we are.
Somehow I got sucked into this, but okay.
Oh, come on.
All right.
You were one of the first ones who said, hey, I think that's a great idea.
Well, I figured this could be my new career too.
True.
I get a couple million and I can retire.
Well, you and you did a lot of research for this first episode. You've come in with more papers than I think anyone has ever in the history of the studio.
Yeah, I probably spent more time doing this today than actual
probably police work. Some of the thought was to, and it was a text message going between us today as to what do we call, bring up some old stories, some history of police work, what went on. So I think the idea is every show will bring back some history of the police department and things that went on in town, just to kind of give people an insight onto, things that used to happen. I'm talking whether it be 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I think the chief even has some information from 100 years ago that he looked up, as we have always keep these log books at the police department. And I'm sure departments across the country, as well as EMS and fire, do the same thing. That basically is anything that they respond to, or anything they're handling, anything that makes any media outlets of the paper. We used to keep a logbook. When did you say it ended?
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to figure way back in the day when people read the newspapers,
yeah,
they would do clippings. And we have clippings from, I believe it's 1890, 1900s. But I mean, there's articles, it's anything about Westerly. You got to figure way back in the 1900s, you had a lot of Providence stuff was there, because a lot of Stonington what we call it Stonington would be there too. There's a lot of neat stuff. And we have like the arrest logs from over 100 years ago. So it's neat. I mean, I'll share some of them at some point today, but I have to be careful with the names because I figure we'd be fine.
But it might be
like
never
my
know.
grandfather, or
That's
your
right.
cousin, or
third or fourth.
So,
It's
yeah,
westerly.
Third or
Careful.
fourth generation later, you're finding out your great grandfather got himself in a little bit of trouble
That's
back
right.
in the day.
That's right. Yeah. So we
um,
talked about we would end each show with looking back on whatever the date may be,
Yeah.
that time period.
Go
So
over a couple little stories to kind
yeah.
of wrap it up. I think it would be
A little
very,
history,
very
yeah.
interesting, very interesting,
yeah, a little history.
to say
and
the
how
least, to
things
the
have
listeners out
changed.
there. So
Yeah.
the idea is we plan to do every Monday. What are we doing? Every other Monday?
Something.
Yeah, probably
here.
every
Yeah.
every other Monday or so.
we didn't start off
we'll
like this
do
first
this.
week, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With-
Well,
with
we
a
just
guest.
need to get through the next 10 minutes of this, and then
Yeah.
and then we'll
Yeah,
decide.
we had somebody from LA who was going to talk to us about the fires. Unfortunately, he had a meeting that came up because things are still going on out there. So
I can't imagine why. There's
he'll
no time for us.
I know.
so he'll be joining us in the
But
next couple of
but
weeks.
even you look at that and look at the amount of resources involved in those fires and the makeup and the destruction. I mean, you almost can't. You look like, even the pictures we're seeing, you look like you're in a third world country. I mean, there's entire neighborhoods wiped out. There's issues with what they're responding to, I mean, there's places they're just letting go because they can't
Yeah,
get
but
to
look at all
them.
the stuff that we've done here with the beaches and the disaster they are,
Yeah.
or even in industrial. I mean, I still remember Industrial Drive as a river. I mean, that's nothing.
Right,
compared to what these-
2010.
Yeah, I mean that's nothing compared to
2010.
what they went through, and it was organized chaos here too.
Right. And I think that, you look at what's happening out there, and of course there's always a Rhode Island connection to every story, right? And there are Rhode Islanders who are out there, people who have friends, family that are out there that they're checking on constantly. And as these fires erupt in different areas, as these Santa Ana winds blow in, now today they're getting rain. So now it's not necessarily the fires, but it's the mudslides, because they've lost those areas in the hills, right? That used
Now
to
when it gets
be
saturated, it's going to have landslide. I
right.
mean, that's the issue. They don't just have a little bit of rain to kind of wet it down, because when it rains, it's severe rain, which then causes a mudslide. Because there was some footage on the TV today I saw. They had some mudslides going down over roadways, and I mean, it completely stops the ability for traffic to move into certain areas of vehicular access. And
No, I'll stay on the
certain
East
areas.
Coast in Rhode Island. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't get
But
it.
today we only had an earthquake.
There was an earthquake. What'd you
Was
say
there?
in New York?
I
Yeah,
guess I missed
There was
that.
an earthquake today in Maine.
Maine,
And it
okay.
was felt as far south as Cranston, Rhode Island.
I guess I was busy.
Was
it? Yeah.
Looking at my history things.
I was going to say, I did not feel it from
No,
my
we
office.
didn't feel
I
it
didn't
down
feel
here.
it, so it must not have
we
made it
only
this
had
far.
one a couple months ago.
Did you
I mean,
feel
I
that one?
was in my office, and the whole because I have a raised desk, so it was shaking. I'm looking around, I'm like, what is going on?
Really?
But,
So
yeah.
you
You're
could
not
feel
used
it.
to it, and you
Yeah.
feel it shaking. I know.
Yeah.
But we are subject to that in this area.
We
And
are. We're on a fault, right?
We're on a fault. We've had squalls, those wind squalls over the years. They call them downbursts. I remember back 25 years ago on the PD, we had one wicked one night, and it knocked buildings down the beach. Actually, it was a 10-minute thing, and it knocked actually buildings down. So we're not that we're probably have as many issues as California would with earthquakes, or the probability, but it can happen. I mean,
And I think both of you as chiefs and in your current role now, it's all about preparation, right? And getting ready for storms that are coming or drills that you have. I think something out in California, yes, they were prepared for some of these fires as they are every year, but certainly not to the
not to
magnitude.
the extent they are.
Well,
There's
you
no doubt.
can prepare all you want. I mean, you can go through 100 scenarios, and the
You're gonna-
101
you-
scenario is the one that's
yeah,
really going to
the
happen.
101st scenario is the one that's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like our area. We have beautiful beaches, beautiful coastal community. We've had storms come in. What are we subject to? Hurricanes. But a lot of times we find the nor'easters in the winter do as much damage, if not more, than a hurricane coming in. And we had 2 last winter. And the 2 that we had, we had one. You get down there. What do? We're getting good. You clean it up, right? You clean everything up. You clean the sand out of the streets. You try to replenish things. You try to restore dunes to stop the water from breaching over the roadway again. And 2 weeks later, we get hit again with one that was as bad as the first one. And we pick it all up again and restore the dunes. And we were planting thousands of seedlings of dune grass to reestablish the dunes. It's just what we do. And we rely on all these EMS services to get us through all these things. And we're unique. I mean, we have a volunteer ambulance association, but it is paid staff now. But it's, they might still have a few volunteers, but for the most part, the EMTs and so forth. But it's a private organization. The public safety end of it falls under the position that I'm in, but basically we pay the ambulance corps a subsidy to provide that EMS service. And then if you look at, like you mentioned, Andrew Kettle from Charlestown and the different ones, they all rely on each other's service to provide EMS service to the citizenry area of Wesley, and then we co-share with the other towns. But it's the same as the fire departments. I mean, you look at, we have 7 fire districts in town, 4 or 5 fire departments? Watch, four fire departments, right? 7 fire districts, 4 fire departments. And some of the fire districts obviously sublet to one of the fire departments to provide fire service to it. And and this is who we rely on. And those are all volunteer organizations. I mean, they all have a few paid help, the chief and might be the captain or the deputy chief, or it might be a couple of paid staff. But for the most part, they rely on volunteers to provide all these services. Where you go to, we were talking about LA fires, there are some volunteer departments out there, as well as there's full-time fire that's fighting these things. So the volunteer groups that are in these rural like areas outside of LA, they also have jobs.
Right.
I mean, they have jobs they have to go to. Well, these fires have been going on, and I mean, so you're not going to your job, because you're fighting these fires. You have to sleep at some point. It certainly becomes a challenge. And I think it's very interesting to see how between the East Coast will be once we get, because I'm sure this person will come on at some point, how the East Coast and West Coast can certainly, the differences in how we respond and handle things. It's all roughly the same, but just how to handle, because they had issues with water. The reservoir was dry or something. They couldn't pump the water fast enough. Our whole water system of the ground is in, it's an aquifer that's under the ground that we're pumping our water supply out of. And you think to yourself, do we ever, you ever get to the point where if we had some mass fire thing, God forbid, would we ever get to a point where we run out of water? Because we have water tanks in town. The water tanks in town are not for our residential use water. The water tanks in town are truly for fire suppression. That's all they are. The 1 million gallons tanks, 2-3 million gallon tanks that we have throughout the town are just for fire suppression. In the event there's a fire, we're drawing off a fire hydrant that it can keep up with the supply that we need. So it's very interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think, as you said, you can plan, but it's always that scenario you don't plan for that happens. So we learned from each one. So you talked about 2010 when we had the issues with the Pawcatuck River rising, we had the flooding.
The gas, the biggest issue I think was the gas, and we had to go in the houses because they couldn't finish the gas off. It was we didn't plan for that. You didn't plan for going in people's houses because you had to shut the gas off because the river overflowed into the. You just didn't think of that. At least now, unfortunately, as these disasters happen, we do learn. Well, hopefully, we learn from them.
So both of you have been on the road on patrol. Now you're in these positions. What do you now bring to these positions that you learned then? Does that help you in the planning process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the flooding of 2010. I mean, I can remember being down on the Pleasant Street, Pierre Street, Canal Street area, and the water is rising. We're like, what the heck is going? And we're driving in it still to the point it's getting too deep to drive into. Nobody ever anticipated there was going to be 4 feet of water on Industrial Drive. It just didn't. It never anticipated, and it kept rising and rising and rising. Well, wait a minute, we have to shut these streets down. It was going up, up Pierre Street, and I remember that night standing on it would have been Friendship Street, looking down, just like a hill, and there's 4 or 5 feet of water in that entire area. Never seen anything like it in our entire life.
You have the chairs from the beauty salon going by. It was a dumpster going by.
Yeah, it was just you never seen anything like it in your life. So again, then you plan accordingly, but then we didn't plan for that by any means because we didn't anticipate that. But then you respond accordingly. I mean, you make sure everyone's safe. You secure the areas, and we had details blocking all the areas off because now they had to shut the power off. The gas, the problem is water gets into the gas mains, the natural gas mains. So they had to shut the gas systems down. And then the issue was it wasn't so much Once the water subsided, everything went back. Well, now they had to purge all these gas lines, which, if we remember, took weeks
Right.
to purge the gas lines to get the gas flowing again, because I guess natural gas don't mix too well. So it was definitely a learning curve. But what do you bring to it? You bring all those experiences. And we talk about hurricanes and flooding down the beach and storm surges. And I always, like I said, the last two we had last winter, we're getting good at cleaning up. I mean, we certainly do. You get better at cleaning up. There's different responses you do, different techniques you do. I mean, this winter we went down there, the walkways that go out to the beaches, go out to the shoreline, rather than go over the dune. We filled them all in. They're like 10-foot high dune now. Why? To stop any surge from the winter coming over into the roadway. In the spring, we go out and pull our sand back at them and put it on the beach again. So you do. These are the experiences you bring to these things, but there's not.
Yeah, and you also get the experiences from the other departments. I mean, from the fire department. I mean, they can probably get, the Pawcatuck River when we had the vehicle into the ocean. We've had a couple, and into the river. We've had a couple. I mean, these guys went in, had to go get somebody. I mean, they train for this all the time. But I mean, they do it. We learn from it. How can we help them? And then vice versa. If they can help us, they help us. The same thing with the ambulance corps. There's so much training out there, and even if you got 75% of that training, it's enough to get by and do it safely. So
I always say you have a plan A, you have a plan B. Usually by the time you're implementing these things, you're on about a plan F, right? Because things change. I mean, that's just a reality. I mean, last weekend they had a rescue out on Watch Hill Bay, right? Remember, it was in the paper that there was some
kite
surfers, right? So the bay freezes up because it was so cold, right? It's frozen right up out to the. So there's a kite surfer. They're stranded out there. They can't. I don't know what the issue was, if they fell in or the kites weren't working or they couldn't get back. So then they have to figure out a way to get out there and get them. How are you getting out there? You're on ice. The ice isn't safe per se. So I think they went in down, off of Pawcatuck Avenue down in that way. And, you got people in dry suits and everything else because you go in. I mean, we rely on these services. And I think it's important to share those, share those stories. So let everyone out there know what first responders are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
And sometimes some of our events that we all work together don't come out. I mean, as we like them. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes people don't make it. But the tools and the experiences that the other departments can share are unbelievable. We had an incident on Main Street. I mean, they had like mini underwater drones. I mean, it's just, another fire department had it. They brought it here. So it's neat to see the technology being used. And a lot of the fire departments are, with drones. We use Charlestown, the town of Charlestown. We use their thermal drone. We've used it probably 4 or 5 times in the past couple of years.
And what is a thermal drone?
Well, they can see heat. So if someone's lost in the woods, you can see body heat and that kind of stuff.
The drone technology is phenomenal.
That guy would be a good guy to get on. The guy, I forgot his name, but he's at Charlestown. I believe he's an attack officer or something like that. And he does that. They use that as part of their assessing or taking pictures or not. But it's absolutely amazing.
That's where it's going now. I mean, a lot of this stuff is all drone footage. I mean, it's
pay money to get a drone. You could take a couple.
But it's a lot of money. There was grant money out there for it. That's what you always try to research to buy this stuff to advance your technology. But then you have to train someone on it.
Right.
That costs more than the drone itself to maintain the certifications and training and
it's not easy to get a drone. I mean, you got to get a pilot's license.
Yeah,
you literally have to go through the FAA.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same. You have to go to like an airstrip, generally speaking, to get a pilot's license.
Right.
It's serious business.
Yeah, and most of our stuff like that is bought through grants or federal funding, and you can't. A lot of them won't do drones, and if they do them, they're very specific ones you can't get because they don't obviously want a made in the USA one. And the government is very restricted as far as the drones, so you have to kind of go outside the government to get them.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars
for some of these.
For one that's even worth it. I mean, you can go to Best Buy and buy a DJI drone for $500, but that's not going to do what you need.
But I remember, as technology advances, because obviously when I got on the police department, there was no such thing as cell phones, right? I mean, there was no, and that's really dating ourselves, but there was no cell phones. And then, we had manual typewriters when I got on. Literally had to sit in a report room going ting, 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 and you had to rewind the ribbon because we used the ribbon over and over again, right? And you had correction, the correction
The white.
the liquid whiteout, right?
The whiteout.
To do your reports. And so we had gotten electric typewriters because they were hand-me-downs.
Fancy.
And so it was
They
like,
made-
wow.
they made
It was
great
like,
noise.
wow. It was like, holy cow. Because of course, typical police or anyone, you type them with the 2 fingers, right? And you get
I
pretty
still
good
do.
at it. Actually, I can type with probably 4 or 5 fingers now, but you get pretty good at it. And then we got to the point that we were going to start implementing computers, and it was not a well accepted by any means. And they were basically word processors at that point, right? I mean, it was just basically a word processor on the screen. And then we got into the computer software. And this is probably in the early 90s that it started going through, and that's been revised and revised and revised. I mean, now technology, every single car has computers in it, linked right to the registry database.
Well, yeah, you got to figure.
history.
So when I got on in 04,
Yeah.
There was no typewriters, which is fine. But the computers, I mean, they're old computers. Nothing crazy about it. And all you did was type reports. You really didn't. And I remember, especially on third shift, especially when I was the junior guy, so I got stuck with the worst car, and we didn't have a computer in our car. We never we had there was one laptop, and you would fight over which one would get it because it had a DVD player in it. That was it. And you would and eventually. I mean, right now, every car has MDT in it. Every car right now has a Wi-Fi hotspot. Everybody has body cameras. I mean, the technology and just in 20 years alone is unbelievable.
I was on the phone today with someone from the government here in Rhode Island about getting some records for something. And they were like, well, and we were trying to get them to send an encrypted PDF email, right? Which is one of the options for how to get this.
We
and
do it the town side too.
And they were like, well, we're going to send you do you have access to a computer? Yeah. And they were like, okay, so we're going to send you a CD that you put into the computer. And I was like, I don't think that
nobody even has a CD player.
CD-ROM?
I was like, I don't think any of my computers have a CD drive.
Right.
And the woman from the government on the phone with me said, you must have some outdated computers. And I couldn't, it took everything in me not to laugh and go, no, I have the best computer. Like, no,
they don't have them in computers anymore.
They don't. I have not been able to buy a computer with a CD drive.
Well, we still use the fax machine.
We still do.
The government we still use the fax machine. It comes to the printer now, but
it's still, I mean, the technology is still like faxes still make sense sometimes.
And you still get the spam.
But we don't. I bet.
That's right.
99% of my stuff is through email scans. Scan documents, uploads.
Well, that's the only way I get a hold
as
of
opposed to is through fax machine. I mean, but back to my thing. So we start this whole technology thing to show you how much it advanced in 35 years, right? And there was no cell phones, and then all of a sudden became you had pagers, and it was remember the pager thing.
Yes.
And it was a pager originally just had a number. It only put a number on it. Then you have to get to a phone to call the number, and it was a big thing. Pagers. Then there was pagers with script that would come across. You could actually type.
But you only had a certain number of characters.
and then we started getting into bag phones. Remember the bag? The bag phones, big bag phones. And this was like the latest and greatest in technology. And then
what is a bag phone?
Yeah, they're much older than we are.
It literally
it's
was
a bag.
About
it's in a bag.
Big, and it was in a bag, and you would carry it.
And it had a big battery pack. You could plug it into your cigarette lighter. It was a regular phone, but it was called a bag phone because they weren't installed in cars at the time.
Right.
And then you went through the whole craze of things installed in cars, mounts, phones installed in cars. And now look, everybody has one of these computer devices, right? It's a flat screen. They don't fold anymore. There's no antennas sticking out of the thing.
But there's also in every car, the screen, it looks like you're at the movie theater.
No, a regular car too.
Right.
Yeah, regular
they're
car.
so large.
Talk about distracted.
Now. Well, that's the thing. Distracted driving.
I know.
I mean.
So technology is so advanced now.
But let me ask you about technology and AI, because AI is what everybody's talking about.
That's the latest.
What about AI in law enforcement? How do you use it? Do you use it?
AI in law enforcement is still kind of touchy as far as people's rights, and people are concerned that they don't want their stuff, their pictures taken, held, do advanced searches, whatever you can think of. I mean, unfortunately, it's just another tool for law enforcement. It really is. I mean, we don't have any report writing AI. I know some departments you can talk into the computer, just write the whole thing. Or I'm sorry, it does the body camera. It'll actually transcribe the body camera transition it transfers it right to the computer, and there's a report. That's it, done.
So in other words, if there's something on body camera you don't want in the report,
It's
going
there.
on the report anyway.
Yeah.
But I now, even when I'm on a Zoom meeting, and this must be some new program that the town has, but I get to read it at the end of it, which gives a
A
complete
transcript.
transcript
Yeah.
of the whole Zoom meeting. And of course, I'm like, where did this come from? We didn't, the
You didn't
whole entire, we
authorize
didn't know,
it.
we didn't even,
Right.
but it's, so, I mean, it's, again, the technology is phenomenal. Like the chief had mentioned this, the cruisers now have they're all Wi-Fi hotspots. So you can pull anything off them. I mean, you can, it amplified. The radios are all through a lot of the newest style radios.
So
Wi-Fi.
the new style radios, again, we're getting them slowly. It's all through Wi-Fi. If you have bad service, it'll pick up the car Wi-Fi. It'll pick up, like if you're at the hospital, we have their Wi-Fi. If you have different buildings, we can go through their Wi-Fi, just so we always have service. Again, how great this technology is, it still doesn't work 100% yet. Like the AI stuff, I mean, even if the transcription is not going to be 100% on. So you get into, all right, well, that's what you're submitting as a report for court, but that's not really what it transcribes. So it's not there yet. It will be. I mean, it's
coming
In the next month.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
right.
coming. And whether
so
you like,
that's
and
it.
there's typical, you hear all the bad things that happen from AI because they can
Well, and
duplicate
the
someone's voice and
scams.
the
Right.
scams that are going on. I mean, we could dedicate one of these shows.
I think a
to,
couple of the
the
shows
show
are
is
going
Howie
to
was a little
be.
disappointed he wasn't coming
Yeah.
on today.
Well,
I know.
we'll have Howie on.
to just on the scams because they're ever changing. It's
Right.
it's just like we could do one on at some point on active shooter. The active shooter thing has evolved. I mean, I was teaching back in the 90s. We were going to the different community groups and schools and faculties and the employee and staff at the mills and businesses in town to basically talk about active shooter situations and what to do and so forth. Because as much as you think Little or Wesley, but we've had it here. It's happened here. Active shooter incident at a business. We had one just a few years ago. So to educate people, but they evolve, they constantly change. As much as you think you come up with a plan on how to respond and you're teaching people what to do and give them some pointers and tips, because there's nothing you're going to do to prevent it totally. And you just teach them how to be safe and how to respond and how to react and some things you can do just to potentially be safe. But it's ever changing. And I remember that I had taught a group at some group, I don't know, it was one of the, actually, I think it was Moore's Mill in town. And we did it I was with Jamie Campbell at the time, who's now the chief in Jamestown. So we taught this group. Well, 2 days later was the active shooter incident in Vegas from the hotel room. When the guy shot out the window and then was shooting to the crowd of concert goers. And of course, at that point, we throw our hands up and go, what are we doing for that one? I mean, how are you training? I mean, it seems to be evolving. And I think the more media these things receive, it gets people's heads spinning and so forth. But it just shows that things are ever changing. There's no doubt about it. But the reality when you deal with first responders, whether it be EMS, fire, police, there's still a person element. People that you need someone to handle it can't be all technology, right? Somebody has to go interact with these people and talk to try to quell situations.
Well, yeah, and I think too, when you have either a hostage situation or somebody has barricaded themselves somewhere, I think you're on that team, right, where you talk people out of these negotiation team.
I
Do
didn't
they
have much
still
luck
have
there.
that?
Yeah, we try not to call them.
Yeah, trying to call me. So I was on it for probably since the early 90s, but I don't have the patience per se as much. It was kind of like, okay, we're going to get to the bottom of this pretty quick. One or two things are going to happen. This is going to end or we're going to end it. And
sometimes you need that, right?
It's not always
After
a
the
positive
negotiation
So
phase.
we have negotiators.
Yeah.
That aren't Sean within the department.
Yeah.
As far as like they're in the they're part of the TAC team. They'll train and for those kind of events.
And like you mentioned, the TAC team. TAC team is really a SWAT team. Most people would know it as a SWAT team, or it's a first response team or a primary response. Like a warrant team or something. But really, it's a SWAT team. But the word SWAT kind of wasn't very well. Make people upset, and so they call it a SRT team, special response team. And it's basically just it's a group of people on the police department. We're one of 4 in the state.
Well, you have
there's only 4, right?
A lot of them have regionalized up north. I say up north, meaning like like north of Coventry.
Because Rhode Island's so big. You
Yeah.
know, we talk about.
Because like South County, I mean, you would know better than I do. Like there was a South County one, right?
There was at
Charlestown,
one point,
there was Hopkinton. So we're the only ones in South County.
Only one in South County, yeah. I think it
so-
really is not. Providence has one. State police have one.
Again, and it's really
And there's a regional
ultimately
team, and there's us.
to benefit the town. I know a lot of people don't like, like you said, the SWAT team. Well, I hope we never have to use them.
Right.
we
But,
do
but
use
it's
them.
great
do-
that we have
we do,
them
we have them.
trained
They
and ready
do
to
get used for
respond.
warrant searches, for like an executing a search warrant, or if you're doing a warrant pickup on a high risk person, you'll use them. And all it means is they train. I don't even. They train twice a month now, I think. Yeah. So it's a group of 10 people on the police department that train in this specialty. So they work as regular, whatever their assignment is on the police department. But in the event the team's needed, they'll get called out in the team. And they have, heavier gear, heavier body armor. They have higher powered rifles. There's more. Helmets and all kinds of stuff. I was on it for years since when it started back in the probably late 90s, early 2000s. And but it does get used. It's a it costs money naturally because you're training them.
Well,
you're training them twice a month.
The replacement for patrol, and then the classes of the equipment.
Right. If they come off the road,
because you don't want to have a team that they're still shooting BB guns. I mean,
Right.
you have to have the technology and whatnot.
It's high
but that
risk, high risk
costs
entries,
money.
yeah. Costs money.
So-
No doubt about it.
Right. So, I mean, you've been there, you've done the chief's job, you know how important it is to have this. Now you're the town manager, you have to make the decisions on money and what you do. I mean, that must be difficult since
It is. What are you going to cut? What are you going to fund?
Well, I think it's a blessing and a curse for me because it's hard for me to get anything by him too. I mean,
because he's been there and done that.
we have those meetings and we're talking about budget stuff, and there's not, I mean,
I
it's
just
just
at this point, I'm just here just to spread
Right.
out you because it's not worth the argument.
Yeah. But it's just the problem I always say from this perspective I'm in now is you're working for the taxpayers and you want to keep the taxes the best you can, and you want to keep any potential increase in the taxes as minimal as you can. And that's a lot of times impossible because everyone, you make it work. Everyone's deserving of a pay raise. There's a cost in services. Again, we just talked about the SWAT. So if they're training twice a month, it's 10 guys. It's it's a 8-hour block.
Yep.
So you go 10 guys times 8 hours. That's 80 hours. Twice a month's 160 hours. 12 months a year. You do the math.
Well, you can't get anything
He's a
by
rain
him.
man when it comes to that kind of stuff too. I try and I'm like, okay.
1,600 and something hours and go times time and a half. And it isn't, they don't get paid time. There's replacements on their shifts.
Yeah,
So the
and plus,
people get-
to the credit of the guys on the TAC team, they have comp time.
Yeah.
Like within the department, they have comp time,
Mhm.
and so that to me that shows. Listen, these guys they want to do it for
They're
the benefit of the
valued.
town. They're not
Mhm.
doing it to make money.
Right.
I mean, they don't. It's been a long time since the call out. Actually, a couple months. And like we've helped other departments, so it's nice
That's
to
the other
have
thing.
it.
Other departments will use that resource because he just said we're the only one in South County.
Right.
So Connecticut doesn't, right? Nothing close. State police are the closest.
Yeah, I don't know if Connecticut has a regional. I'm not sure what they do.
And then you take westerly, so you have Charlestown, Hopkinton, Richmond. They don't. South Kingstown do not have one. So if they need one, they're calling.
They're gonna call
gonna
us.
And we don't charge each other. We just obviously go. And so again, you can talk about the example you're dealing with budget stuff. Canines, very important asset. We have 3 of them now. There's 3 canines on the police department. And you think, well, you buy what's the dog cost? You give it food. Well, no, you have veterinary bills. You're paying the officer to care for the dog, right? They get extra time to care for. They get extra money for being assigned to the canine. And then, they have their own, you have to assign a car to that officer. It's a huge expense. It really is to have a kid, but they're
Hopper
well
was in
worth it.
today. He came in today.
Maybe
90 miles an
Hopper
hour,
will
he-
come one week.
So when Hopper comes in, he'll come upstairs in the hallway, and you can hear his feet on the floor. And then as soon as he hits my office, it's carpet, a million miles an hour, jump on the desk, a couple scratches on there. I mean, he's. But again, and he's different than the other patrol dogs.
Right.
He's granted, he serves a purpose. He's a bomb dog. He can search for explosives, gunpowder. He's also a search and rescue dog. Not non-violent. That's not the right word. But he's not going to go up to somebody, find him, and bite him. That's
He's
not.
not the
He goes
aggressive
into
type.
the
He's not an
schools.
aggressive.
Yeah.
Yes, and not. I'm not saying our other dogs will bite you, but it's a game to them.
Right.
They're tracking somebody. They don't know good guy, bad guy. Hopper just
Everyone,
he loves everybody.
Everybody's a good guy. Right? Everybody's a good guy. Which you need some of that. You need some of that.
And
Everyone's
so
a
the other
good
two
guy.
dogs, I mean, they serve their role, they serve the patrol part. But again, like you said, they're expensive.
It's a huge benefit though. Like he said, Hopper's a bomb dog. We never obviously didn't have a bomb dog. So we would have to use services, bring state police in, Connecticut State Police or another department that had a bomb dog to come into any major events we have, pops, graduations, anything like that. And, big events we'll bring in to do a sweep, fall fest, a spring fest, things like that down the beach. We have a lot of community events that use a lot of these resources. And I think, and I always say the average person, that lives in Wesley, why they live in Wesley, it's a beautiful town. It has all kinds of amenities and it's a relatively very safe town, low taxes and beaches. And I would say we have an airport, we have a train station. Who else has that? Local newspaper, local radio, I mean, you look at the different things it has.
It's a lot of work though to keep this town.
Yeah,
like
it's
this.
a lot of work to keep the different things going. But the average person doesn't get into that. They don't know the inner workings of things, or even how the fire and EMS work and how they work together. All three of these groups have to work together to provide public safety to the town and have to rely on each other. I mean, the fire has to rely on the police rely on the fire. We all rely on EMS, right? If God forbid something happens to somebody. So I think it's very important. It will open a lot of people's eyes as we start chatting with different people through these, as we get through these.
It'll definitely be interesting when you start hearing some of the ambulance stories. Cause they even the fire, I mean, the ambulance too, cause we usually go to like the medical, we go to 99.9% of medical calls. And there's always stories. There's good stories, bad stories. There's some funny stories.
Funny stories, no names mentioned, but
we can't mention names.
Yeah. They're just they're.
But that's how we deal. I mean, unfortunately, that's how a lot of. I mean, I think I'm still normal, but that's how you kind of all the bad things you see, you hear, you deal with. I mean, some people just tuck it away and that's it. I know cops, especially, and we may not want to hear some things we say, but again, that's how they vent, and that's how they go to the next call. I mean, they just put it away.
You compartmentalize it. When we used to deal with mental health and police, all three of the EMS and fire, you see these horrific events that you go to that you have to handle in a split-second decision, make a decision. Hopefully it's the right decision, and it doesn't always work out. I mean, whether you're some sort of incident results in someone getting killed or dying or whatever, and you just compartmentalize it, you tuck it away.
But see, now it's different. Now we've started adding the mental health component of it to police work, and even to like main events. It's like a wrestling match.
Yeah.
Like any kind of big event where there's loss of life or potentially loss of life or anything kind of traumatic. We actually have our counselors come in, and I guess and I know you are too. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm good. I could not believe
that's the mentality.
Yeah, that some of the officers now. I mean.
They do.
6 foot, 240 pound guy is, talking about all his issues, and I'm like, wow. So it's definitely different.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about during this series is mental health, because you're right.
Huge.
You see things that you cannot unsee.
They don't go away.
And as journalists, we usually come in after. But we see things too that you cannot unsee.
20 years ago, I saw my first death, put it lightly. I can see that in my head.
Right.
There's no,
Right.
So
there are some things you just don't forget, but as you say, you compartmentalize them.
Store it away.
And then you hope that
you just deal. I don't even know how because someone says, well, how do you deal with some of the things you just, I don't know. You move on. You move on. I mean,
to me, it's the station nightclub fire.
Yeah.
I will never forget it. I will never forget the scene. I will never forget the smell. I will never forget anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
That probably to me was the biggest thing that I saw. And there are still times that, I'll see a fire truck or something will happen.
You'll have flashbacks.
And it just clicks for that second. And when that happened, I remembered one of the things I did was I was the news director at the time. I brought people in to make sure that those photographers and reporters were okay. But I didn't do it that night. I waited a couple of days because that's when really.
Did they open up to it though?
They did.
See,
because they
police
all.
side, a lot of times are very reserved. You
No,
said,
but
"Man,
it,
I'm not
it's,
telling
it
anybody,"
definitely
but it's
changes.
changed because
it's a
they're now
generational thing.
Well,
Because I
because I
think
think we talk about
the whole
mental health
thing
now,
we
right?
talk about. Everything is mental health related, right? If you're substance abuse, drinking, whatever it may be, it's a mental health issue. There's no, we associate it all with mental health. But you're right in saying, hey, you go back 25 years, I don't know, 30 years ago, I had gone to a scene one night of it was called in. There was a motorcycle at the end of a driveway laying on the side. Somebody might have got in an accident. So it was a night. It was summer night down the beach, and so I respond to it. Sure enough, there's a motorcycle at the end of a driveway laying outside. Oh, there's nobody around. There's nobody around the bike, but it's at the end of a dirt driveway. And I had walked up the driveway. I got about halfway the driveway, and I could see blood in the driveway going towards the house, like dripping blood. Somebody's bleeding, right? So I said, oh, maybe somebody got in an accident. Go to the house, and there's a swimming pool in front of the house. And I look in the swimming pool, and there's a cowboy boot floating in the swimming pool because there was lights on the outside of the house. Cowboy boot floating in the swimming pool. There was a jacket next to the pool. And there was a bloody bandana thing, and I'm kind of thinking, what? Go to the front door of the house, and it's blood on the door handle. Knock on the door, I'm getting nothing, right? Nothing at all. Back up. Another officer shows up. We're kind of looking around. What the heck is going on? We run the plate of the motorcycle comes back to that house. So whoever's there, the motorcycle is supposed to be there. Maybe they got there and it fell over. So it's been on. I'm this little younger guy. I can get the kitchen window was open because it was one of the screen was in there. So I popped the screen out, and I had the other officer boost me into the kitchen window because we're going to go inside and figure out what the heck's going on because no one's answering. So I go in. Of course, you go through the kitchen window. I'm standing in the kitchen sink on dirty dishes, and I go down onto the floor, and I notice there's a plant in the middle of the kitchen floor knocked over. And then I had turned the corner to go into what we now know as a dining room, and there's a guy on the floor with one cowboy boot on. Now we know where the other cowboy boot is, and no shirt on. That was his jacket next to the pool. A pair of shorts on, and gunshot wound to the center of the head, brain matter all over the wall. And I never expected to see that in a million years. And then I had turned to my right, and there was a female at the bottom of a stairway, still breathing, gunshot wound to her head. Meanwhile, I couldn't get to the front door fast enough to let the other officers in because they had no idea what I experienced. But the point is, it ended up being a murder-suicide, and it was, but whatever. Of course, media was involved. Everything was involved. There was an incident that took place down the beach and so forth. But those are things you never forget. So I can
the
tell
detail you just went through that
that's
many
pretty,
years ago.
Right. So you're talking, just say it was in the mid 90s, say. So I have never climbed through a kitchen window for the remainder of my career. I can assure you of that. So we've gone into many houses. We'll knock a door in. We'll do something to get in, but I have never climbed through a kitchen window again.
I never heard that story before. That's pretty good.
It's a murder suicide. And put it, kind of put it all together. So the end result is they would two people down the beach at one of the bars drinking. She leaves to go home. They're in an argument or fight. He drives home on his motorcycle. He falls at the end of the driveway because they're intoxicated. She's not on it. She's already home in the house, locks him out of the house. He goes around, busts open one of the sliding doors by the pool to get in. And he took his cowboy boot off to try to break the door, right, is what we figured. And then she must have thrown it in the pool. His jacket was there because it was hot, whatever. Came in, got in a fight. She had a broken nose, which means she probably got hit at some point. She went and got some gun to threaten him with it. Gun goes off, shoots him. She then goes back out to the street to flag down cars to basically say, I need help, I need help. She's covered in blood from him. And the cars aren't stopping. That's what we got the phone call for, because they see this lady covered in blood and she's screaming in the middle of the street. She goes back in the house and shoots herself. That's the end result. So,
wow.
But anyway, that's, these are things that you never, and again, you compartmentalize it. I don't know. Do you justify it somehow? Do you just, but these are the situations that you deal with.
But nowadays, an incident like that, back then, you probably didn't have anybody
Nobody.
You came to talk to, or
suck it up and move on. You go to work the next day, right?
Right. The chief probably said, "Hey, nice work," and that was it, right?
10 minutes later, go into a
no, you just keep going. You go to another call.
Right.
The next call.
But as you said, now it's generational that you don't do that I mean, you stop, you take a break. There's somebody there to talk to if you want
To
to.
talk about it.
Well, you have to
Yeah.
remember too. I mean, there's a huge generation between him and I.
Right.
And
I don't know, it's that huge. I mean, I don't know.
it's
I mean, come on
enormous.
now.
No,
really.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I might have 10 years on them.
But
Maybe more than
it's
that,
just
but-
different. I mean, police work is different, and people are different. People have changed, and so you have to make accommodations. I mean, if people want to talk, and I mean, honestly, and it stops one police suicide or one person to stop drinking or problems that cops have or whomever, it's worth it.
Yeah, my police. Now you figure, little old Wesley, my police career, 35-year police career, I had 2 suicides, police officers, during my career. 2. That's almost unheard. This is Wesley. We're a 50 man department, but we have 2 suicides over the course of my career of police officers on the job. So it is an issue, right? Obviously, you have to talk about these things. You have to get it out. You have to, you can't be that tough, proud, that you don't want to talk about anything. But again, we could dedicate an entire.
I have some
program.
corrections to make also because
Yeah.
people want to text us and
Oh, they're gonna text us
I'm
as well?
going
I've
to
got
call
some
them out.
text.
We were told we
Yeah.
shouldn't be checking our phones.
So Mark Wright, I don't know if you guys remember Mark Wright.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
He texted me. He goes, "Who's 6 foot, 240 pounds?" So he is correct. We don't really have anybody that big, but I have to make us look a little bigger than we are. So thank you, Mark. And then I guess one of my sergeants must be working. Must not be working. So must be watching me. Told me I had something in my nose. So
All right.
okay.
All right.
But the
Get
6
back to
foot
work, John.
240, once you get even people, and you've seen it. You see some of the newer officers on the road. They look like they're about 12 years old, right? And you think that, do we look like we were 12 years old once? We probably did, right?
Yeah.
We probably did at one point. They look young. They're smaller. They seem to be small. Some of them are smaller.
I still look and feel the
Yeah.
same.
So
We,
You do. You look exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little less hair. But
Yeah.
some a little more chin.
Yeah.
but it's-
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we have, first of all, these stories and conversations and the conversations about mental health
Mhm.
and how technology affects everything that you guys do is wonderful. And you're just 2 people out of how many people are on the department right now?
Yeah, 50 some.
the
Well,
whole
it's probably
staff is-
70,
the whole staff is
75.
about almost 80 people,
Yeah.
75, 80 people.
So okay, so you have that, and you have that's just the police force. Never
Right.
mind the firefighters, the EMS,
EMS.
and this is just Westerly as well. So there are so many stories and so many things, and I'm really glad that that mental health is getting addressed on this, because I have PTSD and I haven't witnessed anything close to the things you
Mhm.
guys have. So I think that that's absolutely wonderful. We have a lot of comments, a lot of viewers, a lot of likes and shares and stuff. We have one question that I wanted to ask about technology from Joe. Joe said, and the reason why I jumped in is I know you have to head out in a few
A
minutes.
council meeting. Right?
Yes, 5:15.
Has the town or WPD started looking into electric municipal vehicles? Is that something technology wise that's
Yeah,
on the
so
horizon?
I can
you
answer,
did.
because usually I ride him like crazy on the vehicles and what we're spending and what we're getting. But so we did. So we actually put in some charging stations behind. Of course, I refer to the old police department, which is 5 Union Street, for just that, not for police vehicles, but it was for municipal electric vehicles. So we did look into it. I mean, to give anyone an idea, you just got new cars in. It was $88,000 for a marked cruiser, fully marked,
Oh, wow.
equipped, the marked
88
cruiser.
It's the K9. No, I'm sorry. 91 was a K9.
91 was a
80, like
K9.
7 is what a
Regular police car
Wow.
costs. So in that, so we were going to look into that. And, so Ford, the police interceptor vehicle makes a hybrid, right? So you can, because the issue, if you only have just electric, I mean, if you run out, you really got a problem, because you don't, gas you can put in pretty quick, electric you can't. So they make a hybrid, but the cost was $25,000 more.
Yep.
So if we're ordering 6 vehicles a year, we're spending between 400, 500,000 a year on police cars. If we're adding an additional 25,000, that's a huge budget item. And then what's the return on it? What do we actually, so it started out very good. That was the direction we were going to go, because it was all kinds of incentives from the federal government on that, because if the federal government's going to pay the difference, we'll certainly step up and do it. Never really came to fruition. Some of the incentives fell apart. They went by the wayside. So I found that there's a lot of departments that were thinking of starting doing that, us included. That kind of didn't really happen. I mean, Hope's
Well, you had that
Well.
company. Remember Carbon Motors? I think it was. It was a dedicated police car. Was it electric or was it diesel? It was a dedicated police car. Because when we get our police cars, you're not just going shopping. Here's a police car with all lights. We have to source the car.
It's all certain specifications on
and it has to. Everything's additional. Where this other company had one thing, had everything in it ready to go. Had seatbelt cutouts for your waist. It had everything a cop would like. But they went belly up.
It went, it didn't work. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have some. Now they have bikes. The police department has bikes. Did you ever get electric bikes?
Yeah, so we have one electric
bike that you can go out and guys can go out on. So I think that technology is there. Is everything. I mean, it's just if the funding is available and they can bring the pricing down where it's pretty comparable, we would do it in a second. We certainly would.
Yeah, but especially with the funding and stuff, we always have this great idea to get these things. Something else always comes up, or if we have to move that funding to something else.
You plan A, B, and C, and then you're on F.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time to end the show.
Paul's got a couple.
That's it. How many millions of views do we have? Can I retire yet?
Yeah.
Not yet.
All right. So I love history, and when we moved into the new police station, we have a library in there, and it has all old, like I said, all old police logs. There's 100 years worth of Wesley Sun Providence Journal news clippings. So I wanted to do something at the end of, like, you can call it on or about or on this date. So back on, today's what, the 27th?
Today's the 27th.
So on January 28th, 1916, and I will leave the names out of it. This gentleman was arraigned before Judge Williamson. He was charged with taking a horse and wagon that was belonging to this lady, and he was sentenced. Kind of boring, but whatever.
Was he convicted? Or he was just arraigned.
It just said sentenced. So I mean,
there would probably, and I can tell you in my career, I don't know that I had anybody stealing a horse or a carriage. So it's certainly how things.
Because then you go into this one February 1st, 1924. So that was Prohibition, and that whole log sheet is all alcohol rates. And again, it's funny because it's Oak Street, Cross Street, Pleasant Street, and
all these basement bar rooms they had.
Some of the last names probably I'm related to, and it's like, so this person, before Judge Toronto on a charge of unlawful possession of liquor, pled not guilty, was bonded out. Now I would assume that's a sum of $2. I can't imagine it was $200.
No, it's probably $2. And if you notice that the reports you're reading off are handwritten, because obviously
I don't know if you want to show things.
Yeah.
Actually, whatever. And then a couple more things. It was January 25th, 1991. There's a Judge Santo Toronto Jr. completed his first day on the job. That was pretty neat. We had, it was a very cold winter in 1856 with a thermometer at 24 below on January 26th.
A little colder than we even had last week.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, there's so many.
They didn't have a warming center either.
They didn't have warming centers back then.
Let's see. We have one of the things says February 1st, 1931. It was the public inspection of the new junior high school building. It just talked about all the big wigs that went there and some of the teaching staff that were there. So
I wonder if any of them are still there.
They might, and as was mentioned by Betty-Jo, it hasn't changed since 1931, right?
It hasn't changed.
There's a few things that changed. Maybe the paint.
There may be some families. In 1931, Miss Beatrice Gavitt of Westerly was teaching math. You have a Miss Catherine Sullivan from Brockton, Mass. General Science. What else? Catherine Nestor of Westerly was teaching English.
She was still there when I went there.
Florence Hope Westerly was teaching science. Yeah, these probably same teachers I had.
Probably some of them,
I went to Charahoe, to be fair. So
Charahoe wasn't even there, right?
No,
That's
it wasn't.
right.
One that I think you could touch upon too was an article. I assume this is the Providence Journal, but it was 1936. The pinball machines were declared yesterday. Pinball machines were declared to be gambling devices by Superior Court Judge Sullivan, and he ordered the forfeiture and destruction of 84 such machines that were seized in Providence.
Wow.
There's a pinball museum that's in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And in my Treasures Inside the Museum piece, we went there, and they actually have some of those original ones that were seized because the flippers, you could actually make them work or not work. So that's why they were considered gambling.
But you win money? Usually on pinball machine, don't you win a game?
Maybe it's.
But then I would say, okay, if I win 5
yeah,
games,
yeah.
that
If you
was
bet
it.
on
Then
it,
you
anything
bet.
is
Right. That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was
A
gambling.
little different than the gaming industry today.
A little
yeah.
bit.
Imagine if that judge
FanDuel.
could see what's happening with that.
But
Exactly.
that today.
Exactly.
There was just about 100 years ago. It was a total eclipse, and I started researching it in Westerly. I mean, it made newspapers. It made Westerly is well advertised. I mean, it says Westerly well advertised as place to see eclipse. I mean, they're talking about 5,000 people coming here to see it. Even just the way they talk and spoke. We've asked every inhabitant of Westerly who has an automobile to assist us in carrying visitors from the railroad station to the hill on Foster's Farm, which is on.
And
Beach
what year
Street.
was this?
Where's Foster's Farm?
1925.
Where's Foster's Farm?
It says Beach Street.
Must be
Beach Street.
Foster.
A mile and a half
Foster,
from
Yeah.
the train depot.
Foster,
Where Tommy
Foster
Ligori's
Farm.
office
the
was.
office was Paul Argiano's office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
right after that, it talks about police seized beer in bottles. That's February 15th, 1925. And there's just so
Beer
much,
in bottles. Imagine that.
there's so much
Yeah.
stuff.
There's so much stuff. Very interesting. It's
Yeah,
very
thanks for
interesting.
doing that,
Thank
because I
you.
think
Yeah.
that's an interesting way to end it each
Yeah,
time.
to show you what the troubles and things, the issues that were going on back, 100 plus years
I did
ago.
have another one that had the actual arrest numbers, but I must have forgot it. It said 3 people for drunk and disorderly and
Yeah.
stealing horses and
And we do.
That's
They
great.
have files in this library of all mugshots. Mugshots going back to the got to be 30s, 40s. All the
Yeah.
mugshots.
So I mean, essentially, too, which people are listening and people know that people, I would really like to get that, so we don't lose it. It's kind of sitting in that room right now, and it should be fine, but it needs to be preserved. It really does, and
You'll have to apply for a grant
It's
to
just
see if you
I
can
got a lot of those
digitize
already.
it.
You got to digitize
Yeah,
it, right? So
to
it can be saved
digitize
and
it.
preserved. I know.
Yeah,
Right.
it's amazing because it's not just police; it's Westerly. It's
Right.
Westerly. It's the state because a lot of the state, a lot of Providence stuff.
Mhm.
There's a lot of Stonington stuff.
Wow,
It was neat.
that's
Definitely.
interesting.
But anyway,
Ben,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Oh,
it's been a
thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
I think.
Betty-Jo, how do you want to sign out?
Well,
of the
I
show?
thank these guys. It's
Well, thank you, Betty-Jo,
I-
for sitting between us, guiding the direction, because you're the one that's got the expertise in how to let these things flow.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that hopefully people found it interesting. We're going to have guests, hopefully,
Yeah.
each week and talk about things.
Mhm.
And if people have suggestions, people that they want to hear from, let us know, because I think that this is a way to educate, again, our viewers and our listeners.
Right.
Yeah,
And if
we have
there's
some
questions you have, they can.
If people have questions, they can ask. I'll be
Yeah.
the voice of the
Yeah.
people. We have a bunch of people saying excellent show, very informative. Thank you.
Mm.
Nice program for our town. I got a text that said the show is great. You need to do it every week.
Yeah.
That was from Ken Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well,
Thank you for the support, Ken.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
but all three of us have jobs.
I know, right?
So
I know.
we'll try to do it every week if we
Yeah.
can. But we appreciate all the feedback. And it's called Roll Call. You guys tell me, why is it called Roll Call? What does that mean?
I didn't think of it. I don't know. You guys made it.
We
up.
thought of it actually
You guys
back
thought of
when
that.
Paul was probably still under my direction at the police department, but it was roll call.
What is a roll
to
call?
roll call, because the police go to a roll call every single day. They go to a roll call. They get assigned their beats. They're assigned a car anyway, and then they go over any details of anything that's going on in the last, the shift before them, the last 24 hours, anything to be on the lookout for, any events coming up, they roll call. They all sit through roll call, and it should be 10 minutes, but sometimes it probably lasts longer. Then after roll call, they go off on the road. So we said, if you're going to go over these stories and life events and challenges of first responders, it'd be good to call it roll call. We thought it was a
There you
good
go.
name.
Thank
I
you.
just went with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you to
Yeah.
our audience for being part of our
Yeah.
roll call this week. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Bye for
Stay
now.
safe.
Do you want to get your business in front of over 100,000 viewers every month? Advertise with 321 and enjoy the best value in local advertising while supporting free community live streams. Your message will be seen across live high school sports, morning shows, and local events, connecting you directly with engaged audiences, boosting your visibility, growing your brand, and helping us keep these broadcasts accessible to everyone for free. Partner with 321 today and watch your business thrive.